What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a slightly different episode of Very Vehicular. As always, I'm your host, Brian Scotto. This Friday is 4-3 Day, aka National Ken Block Day. And to celebrate, we are doing a 4-hour and 30-minute live stream on Blockhouse Racing. Now, what does that mean for Very Vehicular? It means that both myself and producer Nick have been super busy getting this set up because it's a lot more than a regular show. We've got a ton of guests. We've got, obviously, the Blocks. We've got Rob Dyrdek. We've got Jeff Tremaine. We've got Todd Richards. We've got a bunch of the Hoonigan boys. We got a bunch of other people who are surprise guests. The list goes on and on. I even heard today that maybe Jimmy Johnson's going to show up. Anyway, it's going to be a really rad show, and we've been putting a ton of work into that, which means we do not have the standard episode for this week, but I wasn't going to leave you guys with nothing. So I figured, you know what? It would be fitting for me to tell some Ken Block stories today. So we're going to do that. Let me actually kind of rewind. So getting ready for the 4-3 Day stream means I'm always booting up all my old hard drives, right? So I'm pulling out every damn dongle I've got to like reconnect back to FireWire 800, FireWire 400, and USB like C and all these other kind of things that have existed over time to go back and find photos and find video footage from back in the day. And I was going through drives and I just stumbled on a couple photos. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that, or you might know that I ran this series that actually I'm not really finished with, but it was called 43 Stories. And after Ken passed in January of 2023, I didn't really kind of know what to do about it, right? Like, and I didn't want to. I don't know. I didn't want to just make posts saying like, fuck, I missed this dude. And instead I thought it'd be really cool to just like share these little stories. I called it 43 Stories. I started posting them. I posted a lot early on. Now I kind of post them a little bit more infrequently, kind of when the time is right. I do it for myself. So it's kind of one of those things of like, when it comes out, it comes out. And it's kind of the idea of like, a photo's worth 1,000 words. So I find photos from certain times in our time together, and I tell the backstory of them. So I figured now I'm a podcaster, I might as well do this in podcast form. And there's two photos, or actually a couple photos, but two moments that I stumbled upon while I was going through the hard drives. The first one is this photo of Ken, of him in a tuxedo, wearing a bandana, which is a Block 4-3 with the Huck skull character, which is a character that was created by our friend Huck, and wearing a pair of sunglasses, and probably were spies at the time. And he's giving not the middle finger, but the ring finger, but it looks like the middle finger. And he's got his DC athlete ring on, and this was taken at the hotel as we were leaving to go to Goodwood. And there's a couple funny things about this. One is Ken really did not want to get dressed up. So first off, Goodwood Festival of Speed has, first of all, it's an amazing event. If you listen to this podcast, you've heard me wax on about how fantastic it is. If you get the opportunity to go, you should. It's great. But I want to talk a little bit about sort of Ken's impact there. I want to rewind to this. So they do this like VIP drivers ball, and it's a black tie event. It's really fancy. There's always like some amazing band playing. There's always fireworks and a crazy show, and food's fantastic. It's a really, really cool event. And but we were headed out to it, and and I was reading the email, and I said, "Hey Ken, this was the first year we went to Goodwood. This was 2010, and I said, hey, we have to wear tuxes to this. It's a black tie event. He's like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, we really like it. We need to do it. Like, I don't think we can just show up in t-shirts or in a hoodie. And he's like, oh, all right. Like, he really didn't want to. And Ken historically never enjoyed dressing up. And he famously said to me once, we were meeting with Ford to do the deal. So this was probably late 2009, early 2010. It was the Detroit Auto Show, actually, so I could put a timing on it. And we went to the auto show, and we were meeting with Ford to sign the contract. We'd already been through the contract, but it was kind of just, it was like breakfast. It was a little bit of a, thing to do, a little formal thing to do with the Ford folks. And he said, okay, we're going to sign the contract and so on. And it was an early morning event. And I had spent, the 6 years previous to that working, in automotive, taking a lot of meetings with manufacturers. And I would always kind of dress up, like I dressed up as much as like my shithead self could do. But like I would at least wear like a button down and like a sport coat over it or something like that. And I came down, I wasn't wearing a tie, but I had like a button down, I had like a jacket on, and Ken was wearing what looked like sweatpants and like a hoodie. And Ken looked at me and he said, what are you wearing? I was like, well, I mean, there's like a bunch of like executives like coming down right now from Ford. I think like Jamie Allison, who was like the head of Ford Racing, was coming, and Scott Demby and all these other people. He said, but why are you wearing that? I was like, well, I don't know. I felt like it was this important thing, so maybe I should wear, this. I don't know. And he looked at me and he said, they don't pay us to dress like them. That was it. I was like, oh shit, yeah, he's right. And his point was like, you don't have to try to pretend to be them, because they want us here because of who we are. And if like that's not you, that's not us, like don't dress like that. And to this day, to be quite honest, kind of is the reason I always wear a hat, a t-shirt, or a hoodie. Two things, although as I'm getting older, I'm starting to try to maybe mature it up a little bit. But it was this idea that, they want us here because we're different. And like, there's no reason for us to try to be like them or assimilate to what is expected of us, of them, because that isn't what they want us for. So anyway, going to Goodwood, it was a bit much to force Ken to wear a tux, and he wore it, but he kind of had to make it up a little bit differently. And I remember one of the things when we actually got to the event, after he took off the glasses and everything else, because it was outside at night, he just decided he was just going to put on an Obama can't Gymkhana sticker on his tux instead the whole night. It's like the guy just couldn't deal with like dressing up nice for the night. And I thought it was pretty funny. But look, this is just kind of the person Ken was. He felt like he didn't want to have to be someone else for someone else. And it's something that like I really respected from him, and it changed, I think, the way I looked at it, because I guess as someone who felt like they always had imposter syndrome, I felt that need to like, hey, I have to dress this way to fit in, or I have to look this way so that people will take me seriously. And Ken's point was like, just let your work like speak for you. Don't care about, the rest of it. But at the same time, be stylish, but be your own stylish. Don't feel like you need to, be like them. Anyway, this is all kind of a roundabout to what I really want to talk about, which is, what Ken really brought, I think, to Goodwood. And this is something I don't know if people really talk about. I haven't seen people talk about it. And we've spent, a lot of time talking about the impact of Ken Block the past couple of years since he's let them in. I'm wearing the impact of Ken Block Peterson shirt. We did an entire, exhibit at the museum talking about all the different pieces of impact. But this is actually one that maybe just doesn't really get mentioned much. So the year is 2010, and we've been invited to the Goodwood Festival of Speed. Now, I want to set the timing for all of you who either weren't around back then or not paying attention back then or who forget. So in 2010, we've only released Gymkhana 1 and 2. So those are just the first 2 Subaru films. No San Francisco, no Hoonicorn, no Hoonigan, right? This is really, really early on. Funny thing is the first stickers we ever handed out for Hoonigan were at Goodwood, but I'll get to that. But this was early, and while Ken was getting some notoriety, he was not really super well known yet on the global stage. It was also Ken's rookie year as a driver in the WRC. And that actually did make some noise because, Americans hadn't had many drivers in the WRC, or definitely not many. And, at that point, I don't think there had been very many in the past decade or 2 decades before that. And Ken had a really good showing at his first event, which was in Mexico. And, people were starting to talk. And by the way, very good showing. I want to say was 9th overall, which was really impressive for someone who raced in a national series in the U.S., who was in their 30s, who didn't grow up on 2-pass recce and all these things that the European drivers had, and who had really had very little experience in a WRC car up until that point. And on top of that, we just they were, like I said, this is pre-Hoonigan Ken Block. We had just left Subaru, which, by the way, if you were there back then, no one was happy about that. I mean, mostly everybody was really pissed and would just say things like, go back to Subaru. We hadn't released Gymkhana 3 yet at the Autodrome. That hadn't been released yet. So this is in this kind of weird in-between moment. And we go there, and we are sort of told by, the organizers. We spoke a little bit with Lord March, but not too much. And we're basically told, listen, you can slide around a little bit, but whatever you do, just don't get out onto the grass, right? We're not looking for that kind of behavior, because at this time, and up until 2010 at Goodwood, it was more of a gentleman motoring event. I'm not saying it still isn't, but there's a lot more fun, I would say, at Goodwood. And I want to make the argument that I think Ken brought a lot of that fun there. So, of course, Ken goes out. First, we were doing stuff on the rally stage in the FoS, which was a ton of fun. But Ken goes out and decides that he is going to send just massive donuts and the biggest slides he possibly can. Ripping up the lawn, almost into the hay bales. And while this seems pretty normal nowadays at Goodwood, it absolutely wasn't at the time. And I remember there was a mix of, hoot and hollering and the fans who loved that, and other people kind of looking at us crossed as like, what these damn Americans are doing here. What type of, uncouth behavior might this be that they've brought upon the Goodwood estate? And there was this joke that was kind of going of like, oh, Lord March is unhappy about, what Ken has done to the grass. And there was even a little bit back and forth of like, ooh, would we be ejected or not? But it turns out that, no, actually Lord March, who is, now, I guess he's the Duke of Richmond, Charles. He actually loved it. I mean, he fully loved the spectacle that KB was, the effort and everything that we put into it. And, leaving there, first off, Ken was given a trophy, an award. I don't know if this might have been an award that existed previously, but he was given the award, which was most thrilling driver, which Ken just dubbed the Hooning Award. Because we didn't set the record on the hill climb, we didn't set the record on the rally stage or anything like that, but Ken put on a show, and it was clear leaving by all these articles that came out afterwards that this was something different. I remember Car Magazine, which at the time I thought was probably one of the best car magazines in the world. Car UK said something to the effect of like, yes, Lewis Hamilton was there. Yes, Sir Sterling Moss was there and Jackie Stewart. but it was the young rookie Ken Block who put on all the excitement. It's funny to call him young because he actually wasn't, but I think they just saw us all as young. And Carr went on to say how watching Ken slide his his Ford around and smoke tire smoke and just these big donuts and just kind of like this absolute juxtaposition of what at the time Goodwood really was, right? And that was kind of the start. And then from there, it only got bigger. And this is actually something that never happened. I don't think we really ever talked about it. But so later that year, like I said, we left Lord March, or now the Duke, but at the time Lord was really excited about what Ken had brought to the event, and he wanted more, right? And for Ken, Ken loved the marketing concept of this. He loved how different this was, and even when we were going the first time, he thought like, wow, this was such sort of a unique and very kind of like different concept of an event. We made a bunch of stickers. And this is what I said was the first Hoonigan sticker, and it said, the Lord said, "Thou shalt Hoon," and it was like praying hands with like a rosary bead, and then what the time was this logo called the Hoonarchy. Actually, one of my childhood friends, Tim Schatz, designed and drew for me. Giving graffiti artists, work in the graphic era, and that sticker, we had that one, and maybe Hooning's Not a Crime. I think we had those two stickers, and we didn't even make that many. Maybe there was like 100 of them, and we handed them out at that event. That was like the first place that sticker ever got handed out. And then there was, as I mentioned before, the Obama Can't Gymkhana sticker, but that was a DC Shoes sticker. So the first sort of anywhere anyone had ever seen Hoonigan was at that first 2010 Goodwood. Later on, it would be on the window of the Gymkhana 3-car, so people may have noticed it there. But otherwise, this was just something that was just in our heads. We hadn't really released it yet. Anyway, so we fast forward to December of that year. It is the ending, the final ultimate event in the WRC calendar, which is Rally GB in Wales. And we go to the event, and it was I don't even remember how we did, but it was a fun event because it was the last event. There was a ton of amazing, drivers in the series that year. And somehow we end up at a party at the end of the night. We end up at a party. We end up actually going to dinner with Kimi Räikkönen. And then I actually wrote a whole story about this for Road and Track a few months ago. Went to dinner with Kimi Räikkönen. We end up at the Citroen party, even though we're the Ford guys. We're hanging out with Kimi and Sebastian Loeb, and we are drinking pretty seriously. All of us get pretty drunk. I end up pretty much blackout drunk. All I remember is I woke up in the morning, I threw up, and then I pissed out a kidney stone that I'd had for like I don't know, maybe like 3 months, which is a whole other conversation. And then I called Ken and I said, "Hey, I think I'm still drunk. I can't drive." And Ken was like, "You got to be kidding me." And I was like, "Dude, I can't drive." He's like, "Well, we have to be at Goodwood Estate to talk to Lord March about next year in like 3 hours." And it was like a 2.5 hour drive. And I was like, "Look," I was like, "You need to drive." And Ken never drove. Like whenever that, classic race car stuff. He drives when he's on a rally stage or a racetrack, but in between. And he's like, and I remember we had this like rental Mercedes or something, and I just was in the passenger seat the whole time trying to keep down whatever food was left in my stomach. Anyway, we get to Goodwood Estate, and we get to take the full tour because Lord March had this idea that we should do like a Gymkhana type video for next year's Goodwood, like record the film and then release it or air it at the Goodwood Festival Speed. So we toured the whole place, like we not just the the main property. We went to the Rolls-Royce factory, which was super cool. We went to the golf course, kind of, through all the different parts of the property. I mean, and realize, like, I didn't get to this earlier, but, Lord March is like, he's part of the royal family. I'm American, so I don't fully understand how that works, but what it means is he has this massive estate, and lucky for all of us, he's a big car guy, and he likes doing cool car stuff, because there's not just the Festival of Speed, which is an amazing event. There's also the Revival, which is super rad if you enjoy dress up in old cars, but it's still really rad. There's Members Meeting, which is some of the best old school driving on the racetrack that they have on the property. And their hill climb has kind of become this thing that people are really pushing hard for. Obviously, our boy Travis Pastrana goes after it, every year as well. But this event, this is kind of in a different period now in 2011 as we're heading into, and they want to do something different. We came up with a concept for a Gymkhana. Original idea was that we were going to do like a sort of like a fuck your golf course concept. Like, that was really the basic of it, was like, hey, we're going to rip around the golf course while people are out there playing golf. We're going to do that. But I think when we went and looked at it, there just wasn't really enough obstacles. And then we started talking about other stuff. And I remember the last thing we talked about, like, oh, we could, do this, we could slide around this. And we were, kind of walking through all different pieces of the property. There was the idea of, like, could we go into the Rolls-Royce factory and back out again? Or can we include some Rolls-Royces and some elements and things like that? We talked about doing like donut boxes of like Rolls-Royces right off the factory line. We had all these different ideas. Unfortunately, none of it ever came to fruition. But the one thing that got really close was we had this idea of building. I remember still the nickname for it was called Gymkhana. And the idea was to basically build like a downhill jump course. And for those of you who've been to Festival C before, this is where back in the day, Bowler, by the way, are like absolutely batshit off-road Land Rovers. Bowler used to do like a demo on one side of the property. It was kind of like off next to the rally stages. Anyway, we went over there and we looked at it and we came up with this concept of building these like massive dig out jumps. And like when I say dig out, like we were going to dig like deep down into the ground with like big lips that came out. So like when you were watching, like the car would like disappear and then come flying back out again, and just build like this sequence of like 6 or 7 downhill jumps. I mean, basically like a jump section in like a downhill mountain bike course, but built for a car. And I actually don't know why that didn't happen, because we talked about doing it for that year. I think in the end, we just probably couldn't get the funding together to pay for it. Because if you don't know this, moving dirt is actually really expensive. I learned this working with Travis Pastrana, because every time we want to build a big dirt jump to go do something, it's like, wow, that's costs a lot more than I thought. Anyway, we're going to do that. But instead, we figured, you know what? We're still going to come back in 2011. We're going to come back harder. We ran, I think, again, we were going to run both the main event, but we came with a much different idea, having done it the first time around. I remember like we made DC made shirts that had it was like the tuxedo tee, which was kind of funny, and it was like our funny take on it. We just went there, and at this point too, now we knew what the expectation was, and how hard, we could push it, and kind of like went there and realized, this was a place for us to kind of go and be really different and really stand out. And, and Lord March, once again, was, super arms open for us. He just loved, I think, the spectacle that Ken was. And I think I want to say they even did like a little skit moment where he came down and pretended to yell at Ken for like sliding across the grass, and then Ken just ripped up the grass even more. It was good fun. And after that, like Goodwood became this staple for us. I mean, it was, if you think about it, so like Ken brought the Focus there. He had the Fiesta there, multiple Fiestas. The Hoonigan was there, the Escort was there, the Mark V Escort, the Kazi, and then the Hoona truck was there as well. So it's like, you think like this became a place where like, it was without question. Ken didn't go every year, but every year he could go, he went. And which was, by the way, I want to admit, was always difficult in the past because it was always July 4th weekend. And as Americans, it's kind of weird to spend July 4th weekend in the place we fought our freedom or like to get away from, England. But anyway, it became kind of a staple, event on the calendar when we would look at the calendar and be like, hey, we're going to do these races. We're going to do, these such and such events. We're going to do Gymkhana. And of course we're doing Goodwood. Like it became this thing. But then I started to see like it really started to change the other people who were getting invited, right? Mad Mike starts coming, Von Gittin goes, a bunch of NASCAR guys go, and they're all just like, yeah, we're going to go and throw donuts. And now it's like, I haven't been to Goodwood in a couple of years. The last time I went was I guess I went in 23 with Vinny and Ron. And, it was amazing to be there. And I couldn't help but sit there. And we actually did this like round table with a bunch of different people who were there. I think Bagsy was one of them. And I met Mike, Travis. I can't remember everybody who was there, but it was one of those ones where you sit there and you're like, we were all sitting there talking about how impactful Ken was to even just that event. And it's like, you think like before that, there really weren't like drift kids being invited. And if there were rally car guys, like, they were keeping it a little bit tamer. They weren't really, putting on as much smoke. And that really brought sort of like a different element to it. And I want to believe that Ken has like, his part in making Goodwood such a fantastic event. It really is. I talk about it too much because whenever I think about what makes a really good event, like Goodwood just lands it so well. I mean, kudos to the Duke. He's done a fantastic job with that event. And, I'm bummed because it would have been cool to keep going there with Ken and keep thinking up different ideas. I'm sad we never got to go do, the Gymkhana there. Maybe that's something, maybe a video or doing a video there, something we could do with Leah or Micah or something in the future. But that was just this thing that, I can't help but think, would it have continued? I'm sure somebody else would have shifted it a little bit different, but I do think that by Ken going there in 2010 and then doubling down in 2011, which, by the way, he also won most thrilling driver again in 2011, but Ken went triple hard in 2011. It's like, I don't think there was any point in time that he wasn't sideways or creating smoke in the Fiesta. Like, he was just a bat out of hell everywhere there. Because I think at that point he knew he like definitely had permission to go absolutely wild, so he did it. Without question, it sort of opened up the floodgates to bring more of that spectacle, and that is what makes Festival Speed so amazing. Because in one way, you've got priceless pieces of motorsport history being driven like full chat up the hill, which is, from all different eras, which is just so sick to go see, right? I mean, there's Formula One cars, like, vintage rally cars, vintage touring cars, like, just all this amazing stuff. And then there's also a bunch of people who are there just putting on an absolute show, right? Just out there sliding cars around, big smoke, like there's all of that. And then there's the actual hill climb, which has gotten really competitive. And again, I mentioned Travis before. It's like Subaru literally looks at that as like a race event and goes and brings their best to win there. So it's such a cool event, and I'm happy to say that I'm pretty sure that the Duke would agree. Like, Ken left his mark and created this thing that or opened the door for a lot of other people who just enjoyed and hooning and sliding cars around and putting on a good spectacle. And it's what I love about Goodwood, because when we went there the first time, I think we felt a little out of place, like that we were, maybe like outmogged by the rest of these folks. And then and now it's like you go there and you realize like there's a world for both. There's like a world for like these like crazy, ridiculous, priceless pre-war cars and like, round door, Rolls's or Bentleys. I don't remember which one it is. And, and all that kind of stuff. But then there's also room for someone sending a car, reverse entry into a corner. And there's also room for someone going absolutely batshit up a driveway that really shouldn't be a hill climb, but it is. And that makes that place absolutely awesome. Yeah, I don't know. That's a little bit of a story. I probably would have only written like a couple hundred words on this on Instagram. So, that one gets a little bit longer. Okay. The next story also comes from the same time period, which is like early. And the next photo I was going through, and I have to admit, when I saw this photo, I actually kind of forgot that this had happened. So this photo right here is Ken standing in front of a WRC Focus. And that is in mid-December 2009. So here's the situation. I had just gave notice to leave 0 to 60. It was a hard thing to do. I loved 0 to 60 and I really didn't want to go. But it was, like I said, writing was on the wall. And I wanted to do something different. And there was something about what Ken was doing, what Ken wanted to build. We had the framework for what Hoonigan was going to become, although, my God, it became so much more than we ever thought it was going to be. But, it just seemed really exciting. And I was at an age in my life where I really loved the idea of traveling and being on the road. And I absolutely loved rally racing. Rally racing was that sport for me that was just cooler than the rest. I love touring car, love DTM, but nothing was cooler than rally racing. Blame Speed Vision playing WRC, when I was in college, because I used to watch that just religiously. And, Colin McRae and just all of that, just that era, Peter Solberg. It just was such a kind of was such a cool thing to then get into and then be a part of, and to be able to go work at the highest level at the FIA and WRC, just seemed like such a cool opportunity. So here I am, probably maybe 1 week out from having told my publisher that I was going to leave the magazine that I begged him to start, because I got this other opportunity. And also tell my crew, right? Tell all the guys who were working with me, at the time, Mike Spinelli, who then took over, Richard Chang, Matt DeCillo, who I eventually poached to come work with me with Ken, Ron Zaris, who I also poached to come work with me with Ken, Mike Crenshaw, Tony Harmer. I mean, there's just a whole, I'm surely forgetting people, but Wu-Tang Stan. There was just a whole crew of people, and they were like my family. I mean, they were my family before the Hoonigan guys were. Hoonigan was just a little concept in our brains, right? It was the twinkle in the eye kind of situation. I didn't know what that would be, and it was hard for me to leave that. But this opportunity to go do this thing with Ken, and when we went there in December, I don't even think we had the team name formalized. We eventually became the Monster World Rally Team, which then became Hoonigan Racing Division as time went on. But at this point, I don't even think we had that finalized. There was only 4 people on the team. It was myself, Derek Dauncey, aka Dear Old Dad, who you guys might remember from, he was with Ken all along, but you remember him from the Amazon Gymkhana files. One of my favorite people, and someone I have to get on Very Vehicular, because he's a wealth of knowledge and experience in rally, and just has such great times with him. And then Alex Gelsomino, who was Ken's co-driver. That was it. It was like just the 4 of us, just starting the whole thing up. And Ken said, "Hey, I need to go do a test." It's kind of like it was, I think, a bit of like a seat fitting, which isn't like as complex as like the seat fitting in Formula One, but like he just needed to go out, drive the car, make sure that there wasn't anything that, was really off, because it wasn't like a full test. I think there was like maybe just a little bit. I don't even remember how much of a road there was, but I remember we flew out there and it just felt so surreal. We went to M Sport, which was just on like a whole other level. I had visited Pro Drive like a year earlier. Pro Drive was certainly really cool. And I got, this like amazing tour of Pro Drive at the time. And as a big Subaru fan in the era, it was cool to go visit Pro Drive. But M Sport was like this next level laboratory type location. And there we were, like, the Americans coming to WRC, walking into M Sport. By the way, it was a laboratory-like situation, but it was in, I want to say it was in like an old psychiatric ward or something. It was like an old hospital. It was like the weirdest building. Very British, right? To have this like old-timey building, but inside feels like this like laboratory setup. It was like all white, everything. And it was phenomenal. And we show up and they're like, all right, we got to go do this test. I remember we just kind of were sitting around. It was like, I just remember a lot of like sitting in the hotel, waiting for them to call us, just kind of working, on all the stuff. Because remember, at this point, nobody knows we're going to Ford. Ken is still a Subaru driver. I think actually a lot of Subaru guys who actually worked at Subaru didn't even know that we weren't re-upping for the next year. Ken and I were actually thrashing to put out all Subaru content and like all this Gymkhana 2 stuff before the end of the year, so that like the new year was a fresh start and we didn't have any like overhanging content that needed to be released. That's why if you ever go back and look, there was like 4 or 5 Gymkhana videos, including the Gymkhana 2 remix, which like so few people watched, and it's absolutely hilarious. I just rewatched it the other day. It's so it was the artist remix. It's so insane. It's definitely, if you partake in any mind-altering substances, this is the moment to enjoy those and go watch that. Anyway, so it was just this super kind of interesting moment. I remember we get there and Ken and I were working on like the logos for the new team, the website. We're just going through the list. And like, again, the website, because Instagram isn't around yet. Facebook is still really just for like friends and your college peers. They didn't have brand pages yet. Social media is not really a thing. And YouTube is really kind of the only space that's out there that is different than just a regular URL. Again, we've only done Gymkhana 1 and 2. So we're like building out a video that's going to go up on YouTube. We're building out, the web page and the initial announcement that Ken has gone to Ford and we're going to race in the WRC. And for those who don't know this and don't remember, the reason Ken left Subaru at the time was because Subaru was no longer competing in the WRC. A few years previous, they were with both Petter, Christian Atkinson, aka Acco, but they had left the WRC and they had no intentions to return. And Ken's whole goal was to go race in the WRC. Like, that's where he wanted to go. And we'll get into this whole story one day, because the really fun part of this story is that Derek Dauncey was hired by Vermont Sports Car and Subaru to prep Travis Pastrana for the World Rally Championship, and instead Ken ended up being the one to go. Derek saw that Ken had a different drive and different ambition than Travis did. Not saying that Travis didn't have the capability to go there, but Ken had everything it was going to take to go through what it was going to take in terms of like the commitment level. Travis still wanted to do everything Travis wanted to do, double backflips, everything else. And, he saw that Ken wanted to do this, and he ended up leaving Vermont Sports Car to go with Ken to go to the WRC. Anyway, we're there, and, this was like this big moment, and Ken gets in the car. And I remember like just sitting there, like just really exciting to see him go, and he stalls the car. I thought, okay. They had told him. They had said this thing is notoriously hard to drive. I remember something like the clutch disc was like, it's like super small in this car, and it just had like really, really weird engagement. He stalled it again. And he stole it again. And it got to a point where like it was starting to get a little comical. I don't think he was laughing. I think he was pretty bummed because this was sort of like his big moment. He eventually figured it out, ripped the car around, did like a quick test. We weren't there for that long. I think we were there for an hour or two. And I honestly kind of forgot about this moment. I mean, you look at the photo of him, it's like, he's wearing, he's got like a jacket on. I guess he was wearing a race suit for the test. I don't even remember. He's just wearing, the spec DC driving boots here and like jeans. But it was just like this really weird sort of moment because like we had entered the highest level of WRC, or highest level of rally, which is the WRC. We're there as Americans. There was only like 4 or 5 people at the test because it wasn't like a big deal. They brought the car out in like a small trailer. But, I look back at it now and I realize like, man, like we were about to embark on this massive adventure. Like what an amazing, thing we were about to start, and we had no idea. Like, you look back at it now, and Gymkhana 1 and 2 feel really, really big and important, but they weren't as big as, Gymkhana 5 is what really put Ken in front of everything, right? It was really Gym 5 that really sort of, put the brand out there. And it wasn't really until Gym 7 that Hoonigan really kind of showed up, so Hoonigan was there, but it was very much in the background. It didn't really become front and center until Gymkhana 7. So, you're looking at, this is years before that. This is, 2010. I mean, this actual moment's late 2009. I don't think any of us knew what was gonna come of all of it. And I look back at it now and it just seems like such simple times. I mean, this was still an era where, me and him would just travel, just the two of us. Like there was no entourage, there was nothing special. We would just land, hop in a rental car and go where we had to go, and I miss it. If I have any regret, it's that I wish I had taken more photos during that time. Like we didn't even have a film crew. I mean, that's like one of the things to talk about. Like when do you know of Ken to have done something and not to have cameras there? It's like the old, like, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, it's like if Ken did anything and there wasn't there a camera to capture it, did it even happen? But this was a photo I took on like my point and shoot. We didn't have a camera, we didn't have a film crew there, and part of the reason we didn't is because the car wasn't in livery yet. We hadn't, we hadn't launched it. There really wasn't anything that was going to come out of it, and it was a rather small test. We then did later go on and do a proper test at Greystoke, which, by the way, like only the Brits can have places that sound like there's something out of like a Tolkien novel. Greystoke, like really? Anyway, at Greystoke Forest, I remember it was snowing. It was just so cold, but that was the first test in the livery. And I think that was a moment where I really was like, man, we're going to the WRC. Like, we're going to go compete in the WRC. Like, how crazy is this? And I'd been with Ken and Travis when they raced in PWRC in Mexico in 2006. So like I'd already seen that, but like here we are, we're going to be on the top level. We're going to be competing with top level drivers. Yari Mahdi was on the team that year. There was obviously we were on the team with Stobart, which was Matthew Wilson as well. It was just, it was just so crazy to have been a part of that in that time. And at that point, I think if it was up to Ken, that was what he just wanted to do. Like he just wanted to race WRC, and that year was a partial year. That year, so 2010 and 2011 were the most rounds that Ken had done a year, and we thought we were going to increase and do more. But the reality was that it just made more sense for us to do other stuff, and the launch of Rallycross and a bunch of other things. Our partners, our sponsors, who were mostly American brands didn't really see the reason for us to go race in Europe. So I think, I want to clear this a bit, because I think a lot of people think that Ken dropped out of WRC because he wasn't winning. Ken totally understood where his place was in WRC. I think he knew that like the possibility of him, being on podium was really, really out there. A lot of things would have had to go wrong for other drivers, but as he was he was taking more and more time out of drivers, going from 9th place to 8th place and 7th. And I think we eventually 6th in Germany, if I remember. But he loved it. It wasn't about that for him. It was like getting to race alongside, and on the same stages as, the OGAs and Loeb and when we first started, Solberg was still racing with us. I think that this was something that felt just absolutely amazing to him, and that was what he wanted to do, was to eventually get to a point where we did the full season, right? Did a full championship. But unfortunately, motorsports is expensive, and we had to have partners pay for it, and partners wanted us back in the States, and they wanted us doing more stuff in the US, and Rallycross started to gain some traction, and there was a big want for Ken to be racing Rallycross, and that began the Rallycross chapter, which I can now tell you was Ken's least favorite time, because Ken just wanted to race in the woods. He just wanted to race stage rally, and that was it. And I look back at that photo, and man, what an opportunity it was to have been there, and to have been a part of that then. And like, man, it was cool. Also, fuck, I forgot how good that Ford looked. Like I was like, that car looked really good. That car looked really good, especially body in white. I oddly like the Focus and the livery more, but in body in white, there was just something super cool about that era Focus. It was just really good. The Focus that came after that was just, I don't know, not as good looking. That Focus was it for me. I remember Ken had the street Focus in that green color. We ended up getting one out of Mexico through Ford US, and that was like his street driver for like a year. I think it eventually had to go back, so it was like here on Carne, but I always thought that was like one of those super cool, if type cars. Why isn't anyone, I guess they're not importable yet, but I was gonna say, why aren't we seeing those yet? Because I feel like that's a super cool car. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's, I think looking back at it, this moment was one of those moments, for both of us, that was just kind of this, was this thing that had to get done. We had to go. It was a seat fitting, had to check a few things. It wasn't like a proper test. It was a partial test. And honestly, I kind of forgot it happened, and finding this photo reminded me of, just how exciting this moment was. This moment of like, we're about to do this thing. Nobody knows about it. Like, we haven't actually launched it yet, and it's about to come out, and who knows what people are going to think of it. Who knows where it's going to go. I will tell you that at the time then, I never thought we'd have the run we did. I thought, maybe one or two more Gymkhana films, race rally for a couple years, and then that'd be it. Because, like I said, Ken was already in his, late 30s at this point. Maybe I forget, like closing in on 40, if not 40 already. And, I thought we were going to be in this for a few years. We got an amazing run out of it. I mean, all the rally stuff was super fun. And then Hoonigan, and then just a kind of different level of Gymkhana, and, the Hoonicorn, and, Hoonitruck, and then going and doing it again with Audi. It was really, really fun times. Super bummed that they stopped. I can't say that enough. I was saying this to someone the other day. I was saying, I don't think that there is a day that goes by that I don't miss or think about Ken. Like, he was such an amazing influence in my life. Yeah, it's wild. And like, I've lost more friends than I'd like to, I like to say. I lost a lot of friends growing up, and continue to lose friends to this day. But Ken was a unique loss because, not only was he a great friend of mine, but he was the center of our universe, which is a weird thing to see go missing. It definitely threw a lot of us sort of off kilter in terms of how do you go forward. And even to this day, like, I think about things like, man, what would Ken think about this episode? Not this particular episode. He'd hate this episode because he wouldn't really want me just sitting here like talking about him. But I don't know, maybe he'd enjoy parts. He'd enjoy it if he was here. He'd enjoy it if the two of us were here and we could, just shoot the shit back and forth and laugh over it. And he would be trying to tell his marketing parts, and I would be trying to tell like the embarrassing fun parts of it. That was kind of our back and forth. But I think about that stuff all the time. Like, oh, would he like this logo? Would he be stoked about this or that? And I guess that's the way that Ken kind of like lives on with me, because I look through that filter all the time. I mean, I when we did Gymkhana Australia with Travis, it's like Ken was like in the room with me editing it, because like I would just hear Ken be like, really, that shot? Interesting choice, artsy, or like, oh, why are you doing that? Like, or like just like laughing about something Travis did, like, why, like, man, like, how many times did Travis have to try that, whatever, because it was a really good competition between those two that was really fun and friendly. It sucks. It definitely does. And it's one of those things where you don't really you don't plan, not that anyone plans for it, but like, you don't think about how things will be, how different things will be when someone dies and exits in a way that's sort of unexpected. And it's like, man, I still like, there is still days where I'm like, shit, I should text Ken, and then I stop myself. Yeah, it's tough. Anyway, but like, look, it's, at the same time, in saying all of that, man, if, I think anybody would want to leave this much legacy and impact, right? And I know Ken wasn't the kind of person who loved the word legacy or that stuff, but I think he did understand that the impact he had created. But I've always said this. I wish Ken could have read the things everybody said about him after he was gone. I think that Ken was understood more after he was gone. I think for a lot of time, people looked and, complained like, oh, he's not the best rally car driver. And it's like, yeah, he never said he was the best rally car driver. He didn't pretend to be. Or people would be like, oh, this Gymkhana film feels, redundant or same as whatever. And it's like, I think the thing you have to understand about Ken was like, he cared just as much about being an amazing brand and marketing and creative person as he did being a driver. And I don't think there's a single fucking driver who's anywhere close, like not even in the same level. Sorry, boys. But there's just nobody who comes even close to having that package of being able to do the two. To be able to be that creative, create that level of impact, and also have the driving to back up those pieces, right? So, and I think that that's something that he brought to Goodwood. Obviously, brought to rally, and then the whole sport of automotive and all of that. So, but we will be talking more about this, and I'm gonna wrap this up. But if you're still listening and you haven't yet, marked your calendar. This Friday, 9 a.m., 4 hours and 30-minute stream of more of this. Except there'll be more people, so there'll be more banter, and it'll be, and it's going to be a celebration. It's going to be us just enjoying this amazing impact and how much fun Ken was to be friends with, to work with. Although I will admit, sometimes he was a real fucking asshole to work with, but I miss it. I miss the asshole days as much as I miss just the fun days. He was hard and he was honest, which is like a real important thing in a creative. But yeah, Blockhouse Racing on YouTube this weekend. And for those of you who have stuck around to the bitter end of just listening to me and no one else, I just want to. A bunch of people have been asking, like, what else am I going to do and what's the future of all of this? So I figured I'd give it to those who listened here. I'm going to make another video about it, but we're going to keep making Very Vehicular. I really like that show, but it's kind of actually a hard show to do every week because having really meaningful conversations with the right people doesn't always happen every week. We're going to keep doing Firing Order. I really, really enjoy making that show. I really enjoyed the one with Vin and Ron, and the most recent one with Mickey and Nads was super fun because it's actually a subject matter that I do not know as well, but I really enjoyed making that show, and it seemed like all of you guys enjoyed watching it as well. I really enjoyed the Very Vehicular that we did with Victoria Bruno and Mike Burrows, which was sort of like the two opposing. I think I may try to take that and make that its own sort of version of Very Vehicular that we can kind of repeat. I think that works well. That show, I think, did well because it created an interesting conversation. So try to repeat that. Technically, I know no one else really cares, but I'm sort of doing this in my head in seasons, and seasons are 8 episodes to me. It's really like a background thing is why I need to do that, but we've now put out 16 episodes plus this one and another special gives us 18, but 16 full episodes. So technically, what you will watch next week will be the beginning of season 3. And the goal for me is every season to add improvements, to bring extra things. Like, for example, like we're now on Spotify video as well. But there's a bunch of other things that are going to be coming up. We're going to be doing a lot more with the Patreon, with Discord, more and more stuff there. But then the other part is people keep asking, like, am I going to do build content? I do plan on doing. I have a show that I've been putting together. It's called Does It Run? And it basically runs through my entire collection in the process of cutting that collection down from 26 to 28 cars down to about maybe 12. Maybe 12. I don't know. Vinny thinks I should get to 5, which is crazy talk. But yeah, we'll see. There's going to be that. And then I have this other show idea that I'm just internally calling the Scotto ADHD Variety Hour, which is basically a show that maybe comes out like once every 2 months. And it's just like a collection of other little segments that like wouldn't really kind of do well on their own. Maybe they would, I don't know. That like creates an hour-long show that feels more like the curation of a magazine. Because what I miss the most about magazines isn't just the tangible, like you can feel it, but it's also that you curate this experience from front to back. And our whole world has moved into like 30-second fucking short form, which is like so bad for your brain. You're basically fracking your focus. And I think like but it's not like short form in itself isn't bad. Sidebars were one of my favorite things in magazines, but short form, is great if it's a buffer in between some other things. So I'm seeing a world where like it's an hour long. There could be segments that are like feature length that maybe last for 15 to 20 minutes. And there maybe is like one of those or maybe 2 per episode. And then there could be things that are only 30 seconds long or 5 minutes long or 4 minutes long. And it could be everything from driving new cars to Q&As with random people to not really podcast stuff, because the podcast stuff will live on podcasts, but it could be, there could be some build stuff related to it. There could be some storytelling stuff, kind of similar to this, but probably a little bit more built out. Anyway, those are the things I'm working on for this year for the channel, and that's probably going to be it. That'll be it for what I do here. And then I'm obviously still working on trying to do a reunion with all the Hoonigan OGs, and, trying to keep fucking getting into that world of making movies. So anyway, again, thank you very much. I hope this little filler episode was enjoyable. Again, this Friday. And if you are unavailable and you can't make the stream, head on over to 43i.org. Even if you can only donate a few bucks, $2, $3, $5, we're using this foundation to raise money to help extend sort of the impact that Ken had for people in a good way. So one of the things that we say is that, Ken always supported the motivated misfits. And I always used to say this was like Hoonigan was a band of misfits. Like we were not people who were graduated at the top of our class. Fuck, I never even graduated college, and neither did Ken. But Ken gave opportunity to people who were the outliers, right? To the people who normally, on paper wouldn't get the chance. I think one of his best examples of that's guys like Rob Dyrdek, who's now one of the most successful businessmen I know. And the idea is, well, how do we continue that? Right. And that's what the foundation does, is it is working to give those opportunities, bring those opportunities to people who have the motivation, who have the, who have a particular toolkit, but maybe don't have the opportunities coming their way, or don't have the access really to get to some of those opportunities. So, go support. Go share the stream, go show up on the stream, tell people the stream's coming, do all of that. And I will appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you very much. Another episode, half episode, partial episode, kind of like, is it full vary? Maybe it's like maybe this is just like somewhat vehicular. I don't know. It's weird when I talk by myself for more than an hour. Everyone's like, you should do a solo show. I'm like, I can't talk for this long without feeling like I'm crazy. Right now, I feel like I'm crazy. To that, good night.
The mailbox is full. The mailbox is full. The mailbox is full and cannot accept any messages at this time. Goodbye.